Do you have a breathing practice? Is breathwork a part of your philosophy, the fighting monkey practice, or just breathe how you breathe and that's enough? What do you, where are you
Well,
with that?
I supposed to be like super well educated in breathing because that's supposed to be my academical expertise, right? Because
Uh-huh.
when you work with voice, I just to clarify for listeners, I don't do singing. Singing requires another type of work with the voice. I work with speech. I work with like variability of your speech so you can express yourself with full kind of emotional range. You don't hurt your voice. So singing is a particular thing that I'm not capable of doing. I mean, I have a good knowledge, but this is not my expertise. So when it comes to voice, and when you're dealing not only with healthy voice but also with pathologies or whatever, then voice the breathing is interesting thing. Breathing is a transporter, right? And if you pay too much attention to your breathing, you might also kind of create some tensions that are maybe unnecessary, that have been created unnecessarily through some kind of technique of breathing. The pathway goes like this. Um, how I would explain in a short way. Tonality, movement, what moves you, to which you respond, creates a type of breathing that is necessary in that particular situation and give you the wave on which you can ride and express yourself vocally, maybe, right? Um, so I prefer not to look at the breathing directly. Looking at the breathing directly is like spitting into face of a tiger. It's up to the tiger if it's gonna eat you or not. So you're playing there with a really wild animal, right? Breathing is just a powerful thing, It's like your spine is a beast. That's what Steve Paxton once said. So your breathing is also a beast, and an interesting beast that you should not be taming in any way or controlling it. There is some kind of beautiful interplay between watching the breathing and letting it be on a kind of very intelligent, artful way, not create too much volition, too much of control over it, because you will just disrupt your physiology, you will disrupt your kind of natural kind of balance that you cannot control with your conscious mind, right? So maybe if I would say that in some kind of really famous speaking podcast, then maybe a million of people will say I hate you because you're saying that, and there's so much of good stuff in breathing techniques. But I still would say no. I would say, like, let that thing be. You can have a look sometimes, but not too often.
Mm.
Rather look for of how you would like to express that motion or your voice or your communication, and the breathing will go along the way and it will be supportive. As soon as you try to take more, for example, people in when we start to work speech and vocalization, when you ask them to sound as themselves or sound in a certain way, they always kind of take more air. Suddenly the process of breathing becomes effortful, and they basically choking themselves with their own breathing. And it becomes obvious only when we start to express ourselves. When you do breathing on its own, when you make these mistakes, when you make these kind of forced patterns or whatever, it doesn't really manifest itself anywhere in an obvious way. In very subtle way, yes, it manifests itself in your physiology. But when you start to vocalize, these things become so obvious that you are manipulating your body in a very inappropriate way. And you try to become dominant, and you try to know what you're not supposed to. I mean, you try to know in a way that you're controlling it from all directions. So when I work with breathing, it is more like we are looking at the forces of nature, but we do not try to tame them, because they will rip it apart, whatever structure you try to create around them. So any breathing in, hold, breathing out, certain kind of patterned breathing, I am very skeptical. I think for most of the time is really bullshit. But that's my personal opinion and my expertise in it. So people can think of it in a different. So everyone has to do what they believe it's
Mm.
correct. The paying attention to your breathing, that's a whole another story. But how that happens, and what kind of tools you are using, and how gentle you are in the gentle, nourishing observation, or how much you are imposing. And careful, just looking is imposing. Like, okay, I stare at Andrew. No, that's not smart.
Yeah.
Like that's,
Yeah,
I don't know,
oh, he's looking at me. What am I doing? Yeah.
yeah,
Now he's looking
exactly.
at me in a different way. Oh my
But
goodness.
also what, and that one that is looking also suddenly becomes, it's some kind of unnatural, right, thing. So when we put too much of knowing into it, it can create just an enormous amount of troubles. It's crazy.
Do you ever,
Yeah,
back to the voice
yeah,
and how you
yeah.
shared that you work with tone and stuff like that? Similar to the games in the fighting monkey practice, you create a game to create a context to teach someone to
Oh
create
yeah,
an agency. Do you do that with the breath as well? Was that an
of
accurate
course,
assumption that I just made?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so cool, mate. You're
This,
through and through. You're consistent.
yeah, no, look, um, um, to unlock somehow breathing to become more natural. It's the same, like you have a problem with the knee, like you have a problem with the breathing, you have a problem with the knee, right? There's some kind of inflammation or some kind of immobility. Can you really solve it within the knee? No, you probably have to look at the connections, right? Interaction dominant dynamics are more important than the components in dynamic complex systems, right? If we agree that we are a complex dynamic system, and if someone doesn't agree, they need to really argue well. But I think we are a complex dynamic system, and then we know that it is made of components, but we need to look at the relations between those components, right? So when you produce voice, just imagine this: when you produce voice, 70 muscles are collaborating in kind of synergetic way. How are you going to
70,
control
seven
that?
zero.
7-0. So
Sheesh.
and look at this. I'm speaking and I'm constantly changing. B, P, D, T, A, B, C, E, E. So your speech constantly changing. It's really in this unstable, critical state that it can reformulate your tone, your lips, your jaw, your breathing, your diaphragm, your lungs, your position of your head, your gestures, your facial expression. All of that, they work together in some kind of very beautiful soft connections in order to achieve that speech to be fluent. Now tell me in the world who is going to give you a particular exercise for this or that. I just have the feeling that we need to create some kind of games where we unlock it depending on what is the trouble. I will give you an example. When you miss, for example, when you miss a precision in your articulation, let's say, would you use a big ball throwing against the wall, or you would probably use a dart, something like that has a precision? So when I want something precise, I use a dart and I throw it in a particular spot on the wall where it would stay. When you want to have a better diaphragm work, some more attuned structure, you would probably use something like a basketball ball that sounds like metal. When it has a right, it yields, but it's also hard, and then so you through the objects you can demonstrate what you would like from the body. So kind of indirect way, in a way, to help the listeners. When actor doesn't act well, you cannot go like say, yeah, you do not act well, you have to improve that. You block them even more, so you say, like, you need to find a situations within which they find confidence to act better. They find a way, they understand better the material that they're sharing with the audience. The same it is, you have a problem with the knees, so let's fix your range of motion, or let's whatever we would be fixing. No, look at the whole composition and musicality of the composition, and then we will find out how to improve that current state in which you are, and how we could set up a certain policy in order to maybe increase your viability, increase your energy surplus or whatever in your body. So it requires a little bit of creativity, playfulness. Adding to that, like you have a theater therapy, you learn somewhere a theater therapy, let's say, as an example, and you learn a theater therapy, all the principles of how it works, but you really never really played theater. So when you start to do theater therapy, like you feel awkward, the people that are playing the roles are feeling awkward, you cannot kind of step inside and play it for them. So when I do some kind of engagement game, like a playful game, I've been also on the stage a million times. I can play whatever character. I can change my voice. I can change the way I walk. I can change my gestures. I can just put a costume on me and become someone else. I can write a script, I can create a costume, I can create set. So that experience is necessary in order to have more vocabulary, more informational reservoir, to have this kind of pluripotent openness to respond when someone is in a trouble. So we have more language, more tools to play with whatever troubles them.